You can start. Yeah, wait for him to come on. I'd like to welcome you here for the special meeting, October the 20th, in the Town Hall in Wingham here. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Ottawa, and Mississauga peoples. Confirmation of the agenda that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts the agenda for October 20th, 23 special council meeting as presented. May I have a mover? Councillor McBurney, Councillor Whitfield, all in favor? Carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interests? Seeing none. Delegations. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Jerry Gow to come forward with Impact. We look forward to your presentation, and then we'll let him do a presentation, and then we can ask questions if you have any questions about what he presented to us, okay?
So through the read to council, good morning. I'll start out by thanking you for giving me a bit of your time on your agenda this morning. For those of you who I have not met, my name is Jeremy Goff, and I'm your account manager in municipal and stakeholder relations at MPAC. I'd like to congratulate all of you on your election wins, and I do look forward to working with you throughout 2023 and beyond. Whether you are newly elected or a seasoned elected official, please know that we are here to help and have a whole municipal and stakeholder relations team who can help answer any questions you may have as they arise. To start, municipal relationships are a priority at MPAC, and because of that, we continue to focus on elevating the municipal and property owner experience. Today, I'll be sharing with you who MPAC is and the role that we play in property assessment. So at MPAC, we are Ontario's property experts. Our job is to assess and classify more than 5.5 million properties across Ontario, worth a combined value of more than $3 trillion. In the past year, Ontario has grown by approximately 45,000 new residential homes, and in 2022, we added more than $37 billion to Ontario's assessment rolls. Every municipality uses our assessments to make informed decisions about their community, including the distribution of property taxes. Ontario's property tax system and these assessments generate approximately $30 billion in tax revenue annually. North Huron saw nearly $9.5 million in new assessment added in 2022 and currently has over $780 million in total property value. We're going to be taking a little deeper look at that in just a few minutes. So there are four key players in Ontario's property assessment and taxation system, and all have a unique and different role within that process. The first is the provincial government, specifically the Ministry of Finance, who is responsible for setting assessment and taxation legislation as well as policies. They also determine the education property tax rate. There is also an independent body that adjudicates appeals of MPAC's assessed values, the ARB, or the Assessment Review Board. This also falls under the jurisdiction of the province. MPAC, who is an independent, not-for-profit corporation funded by all Ontario municipalities, our role is to accurately assess and classify all property in Ontario. We do this in compliance with the Assessment Act and regulations as set by the Government of Ontario. We are accountable to the province, municipalities, property taxpayers of Ontario through a board of directors that is comprised of provincial, municipal, taxpayer representatives appointed by the Minister of Finance. Next up is municipalities, who determine their budget requirements, set tax rates, collect property taxes to pay for municipal services such as police, fire, roads, recreation, water, among many others. Municipalities use MPAC's assessments and the established tax rates to distribute their tax requirements to ratepayers. And finally, the property owners, who pay their property tax bill and help set market value through ongoing property purchases and sales. As you can imagine, maintaining Ontario's property database is very important. Property data is continuously updated so that municipal records are accurate when our municipal stakeholders are making important tax decisions. Maintaining Ontario's property database includes inspecting and assessing new construction, additions, and renovations as promptly as possible, responding to property owner inquiries, and working with them to help them understand their property assessment. Supporting municipalities by offering things such as Municipal Connect, where municipal staff members can obtain the primary sources of assessment-related information when and where they need it. Working collaboratively on projects with our municipal partners on things such as digital building permitting or e-permitting, processing tax applications, approved land severances, and consolidations. We also have important statutory duties such as handling requests for reconsiderations and maintaining people data for tracking the school support for more than 5.5 million properties. Ontario's property tax system is based on everyone paying their portion of what it costs to deliver community services. To do this, all properties are assigned a value at a common valuation date. This principle is called current value assessment. This is the price a property might reasonably be expected to sell for if sold by a willing seller to a willing buyer after an appropriate time and exposure on an open market. Monitoring the market and assessing newly built and renovated properties are things we do every day to keep our property data current. We also periodically update every single property assessment in Ontario based on the same legislated valuation date. We call this an assessment update or a reassessment. The province-wide reassessment that was scheduled to occur in 2020 was postponed by the provincial government to provide stability and certainty to Ontarians and to enable municipalities to focus on responding to the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result, property assessments continue to be based on a legislated valuation date as of January the 1st, 2016. This should not have a negative financial impact on municipalities, as MPAC continues to maintain and update assessment rules each year to reflect changes such as new construction and improvements to existing properties. For new buildings or structures, MPAC determines a valuation as of January the 1st, 2016 to ensure equity when comparing to other existing properties. While MPAC waits an announcement from the provincial government about the next province-wide assessment update, January 1st, 2016 continues to be the legislated valuation date. As noted earlier, this is a fixed date to which all properties in the province are valued. Provincial legislation determines when MPAC is to conduct a province-wide assessment update. The province sets the valuation date and determines the update cycle. Although the assessment update remains paused, our work certainly continues to keep property data up to date. Property owners will still receive an updated property assessment notice each year from MPAC if there are any changes to their properties. Once the province announces when the next update will take place, we will absolutely be engaging with you to have meaningful conversations on the update and the impact within your community. In mid-August, just prior to the AMO conference, the provincial government announced a review of Ontario's property taxation and assessment system and committed to deferring a reassessment or an update until this review is complete. This means, again, that property taxes continue to be based on the fully phased-in property value based on that Jan 1, 2016 valuation date during this review timeframe. While MPAC is not responsible for setting tax rates or collecting property taxes, we welcome the opportunity to work with the province to ensure that every property assessment process is optimal for our customers, both property owners and municipalities. I want to address a couple of questions you may have regarding the minister's recent announcement. First, what does the review of the property taxation and assessment system mean? And second, how does this pause affect MPAC's work? On the review, we do not have a lot of answers right now, but we share the government's interest in ensuring the accuracy, transparency, and fairness of property assessments. We look forward to working with the government, municipalities, property owners, and stakeholders to ensure that our property tax and assessment system remains fair and fully transparent, and are ready to contribute our assessment expertise and experience as needed. As to what this means for our work, to clarify any misconceptions, MPAC's work absolutely still continues in assessing property within your communities while we await the completion of this review by the provincial government. So on that topic of assessment and valuation, let's briefly talk about the concept of valuation. In Ontario, there are 3 industry-wide standardized approaches to valuing property. The first of these approaches is the direct comparison approach, and this valuation approach is used primarily on residential properties, condos, vacant land, for example. With this approach, we analyze sales of comparable properties that were sold for a similar or identical use as the property to be valued to provide an indication of value. It is also important that only open, valid market transactions are used in this analysis, meaning sales between related parties, forced sales, for example, are not included within the analysis. When we're looking at the valuation of a residential home, although our analysis tool considers over 200 factors, there are 5 key factors that affect your property value the most. First is the location of your property. Your home's neighborhood and market area affect what others would be willing to pay for it if you were to sell it. Neighborhoods, of course, are dynamic. We regularly review and update our information to reflect changes that impact the neighborhood, such as municipal zoning changes or emerging developments. Next up, the size of your lot. We calculate the area of your lot by multiplying the frontage by the depth. We take measurements from the property's legal description in the parcel registry at the Land Registry Office and land transfer tax affidavit or land transfer tax statement from the Land Titles Office. If a property has an irregular shape, we calculate out the effective frontage and effective depth. Next up is quality of construction. There are 17 full and half quality classifications. They range from Class 1 being the lowest to Class 10, which describes the highest degree of quality of construction. Next is the total square footage of the living area based on the exterior measurements of the property. And finally, the age of the buildings on your property. The value of your property is influenced by the age of your home and any other structures on that property. This can be adjusted based on any major renovations or additions that have occurred to those structures. Next is the income approach. This approach is used for things such as industrial malls, multi-residential properties, office buildings, etc. In income-producing properties, the ability to earn revenue is directly tied to its current value. To value these properties, we need to determine how much revenue it could generate. To clarify, it is not the revenue being generated by the occupant, but rather the rent that the occupant is paying to the landlord that we use to value properties using the income approach. This method requires a detailed analysis of the income and expenses, both for the property being valued and other similar properties, to determine how much income a property could be expected to generate if sold on an open market. These 2 factors create a capitalization rate that helps us determine the property's assessed value. Lastly is the cost approach, and this is typically used for general purpose industrial properties such as small retail, warehousing, just to name a few. This approach is used when a property type is unique and less commonly sold on the open market, as we cannot rely on either the direct comparison or the income approaches to value to determine current value due to lack of data available. The cost approach is a 3-step process. First, we calculate the cost of replacing any buildings, structures, or accessible fixtures on the lands. Then we apply a depreciation on all structures due to age, as well as any functional or economic adjustment if there are conditions impacting the value of the property. Finally, we determine the value of the land and add that to the building calculations to produce an overall valuation. After we assess a property or change an assessment, we mail the property owner a property assessment notice. Sometimes property owners do not agree with their assessed value. A property owner may contact you as an elected official and state that they disagree with our assessment. What is important to remember is that property assessments are not taxation. If you get an inquiry, you can help us by asking the property owner a few questions. One, if they could have sold their property on January 1st, 2016 for their current assessed value. If they visited About My Property to review the information MPAC has on file regarding their property to ensure everything is correct and accurate. If they used About My Property to review comparable properties in their neighborhood to see if they are equitable. If a property owner still disagrees with their assessment, they have the option to file a request for reconsideration, or RFR, and we will review this completely free of charge. There is also the ability to file an appeal through the Assessment Review Board, or ARB. The fastest way to start a review is by filing an RFR on the About My Property site, but property owners can also access a paper copy through the mpac.ca website. So let's spend a brief moment to address the relationship between property taxes and assessment. Assessments distribute taxes, they do not determine the taxes paid. When a province-wide assessment update occurs, the most important factor is not how much the assessed value of a property has changed, but rather how the assessed value has changed relative to the average change or shift in that class in that community. This concept is explained in an MPAC toolkit that we have shared with municipalities. In anticipation of the next province-wide update or reassessment, we have implemented a strategy to address misconceptions about the relationship between assessed value and taxation, including resources for municipalities that will ensure when an announcement is made, we're ready with the support you will need. This digital toolkit is available on the mpac.ca website and can help municipalities, including elected officials, mitigate misinformation and provide support and resources to educate and inform property owners. In the digital toolkit, you'll find things such as a new video that clearly helps understand how your property taxes are calculated based on the assessed value of your home. So if you were to visit MPAC's YouTube page or log on to our digital toolkit on the mpac.ca website, this is an example of a video that you would see. It's about 2 to 3 minutes in length. I won't pull it up today, but if you haven't had a chance to watch it, I do encourage you to do so. It really helps explain that concept of valuation and taxation and how those intertwine together. And it's a great tool for you to share with property owners if they're questioning you as elected officials on how things are calculated. So I would encourage you to take a watch of that video if you haven't already. One thing I often hear from municipal leaders and property owners is that property assessment can be complex. That's why we've been communicating with property owners and Ontarians more than ever to help them understand who we are and how we get more information to them. We've also launched a program to give property owners advance notice when we are going to be visiting their properties to complete a property inspection. This allows owners to have the opportunity to research MPAC, get a better idea of who we are, and have an opportunity to prepare any questions they may have before we arrive at their properties. We've modernized our About My Property portal on the mpac.ca website, where property owners can get free access to the details that we have on file about their property, review assessment and sales information for properties in their neighborhood, and find information on what we do if they disagree with their assessment. When we redesigned About My Property, we improved our search features and made the application easier to navigate and understand. We also added a new online portal to collect school support information electronically, which makes it much simpler for owners to change or verify their school support if they need to do so. We have also a new request for reconsideration process included in that as well, an enhancement to ways that owners can browse the site. About My Property was recently featured as an exhibitor in the Transparency Showcase. It's a virtual exhibit of innovative and impactful transparency projects by public institutions, curated by the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner of Ontario. So we're quite proud to be featured among other impressive projects there in this transparency showcase, and are pleased to do our part to promote Ontarians' access rights. So, in terms of your local North Huron assessment base, as I touched on at the beginning of the presentation, what you are seeing here is a breakdown of your total assessment base as of the roll. So these are your values as of the beginning of this year. What you can see here is the greatest share falls into the residential category here in North Huron. So a total of 1,749 properties tagged in the residential category, equating to 42.34% of your total assessment base. Next up is farm properties, equating to 41.02% of your base, so quite comparable percentages there between residential and farm. Following that is exempt properties at 6.74% of your base. Exempt and special properties, those are things such as municipally owned and operated facilities, public schools, churches, for instance, that are exempt. Next up, commercial properties, 188 there, 6.23% of your base. Following that is industrial properties, 2.44% of your base. And finally, multi-residential properties, equating to 1.22% of your base, coming to a total assessment base of $782 million here in North Huron. So as I said, those figures are as of the roll, the beginning of this year. So as I wrap up, I'd like to thank you for having me here today and remind you that we do want to stay connected. If not already, please make sure that you subscribe to In Touch, MPAC's monthly municipal e-newsletter. This can be done through the mpac.ca website if you have not already subscribed. We also have a library of digital resources available for you to access at any time on our website. As well, be sure to reach out at any time should you have any questions or are looking for resources that you can utilize. And that wraps up the content I'll be covering today. I'll finish by sharing my contact information along with our account support coordinator, Janessa Miller. We are here to support you along with your municipal staff, so please do feel free to get in touch if ever needed. And with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those, and if not, I will pass it back over to the Reeve.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. At this time, I'll just take questions from the council, and we'll start off with Councillor Wright, please.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, if that's okay,
Yes.
Reeve.
Yes.
So, there's the first one's about rent. So I'm curious. There's been huge changes in rent the ability to rent out properties between now and 2016. So I'm curious that if you have a new rental build now, if the assessment's based on income, is it based on the income that they can get today or the income that they would have got in 2016?
Yeah, so to answer that question, because we are still based on a 2016 market, rents that would be taken into consideration are rents that are relevant to that 2016 timeframe. When that assessment update is called, whatever year is announced by the province, we would then examine rents as of that point in time to determine what values would apply in terms of fair market rents to those multi-residential properties.
So then so the rent control date, I believe, went on at 2018, right? So how can you assess whether somebody would have had rent controlled tenants or unrent controlled tenants if it's built today, but yet you're valuing on 2016?
Yeah, so we would take rents that are factored in, and then we create what's called a fair market rent. So there's different types of rental properties, obviously. So it would be dependent on that specific property. If it's rent controlled, I assume their rents are probably somewhat reflective of a lower rent than fair market rent, and the value may support that as a result of that. It's really dependent on that specific property and what type of operation is occurring within that multi-residential property. So the same rent rate is not applied to all multi-residential properties because they differ.
Okay. And then my other question is, it's a similar question based on whether a new house was built today or a house was built in 2016. So I assume if a new house is built today, you would assess its value as if it would have been built in 2016. But is it still considered a new house, where a house built in 2016 is considered a 7-year-old house?
Yeah, that's correct. So there's kind of two parts to that. So all property has to be valued based on that January 1st, 2016 market. So what that means is if you were to build a new house today, that house would have a year built of 2023, but the value that's applied is based on sales in 2016. So the rates would be reflective of the sales in the 2016 market, but the details that would go into the construction of that property would be as of the time it was built, but the sales used to create the rate that's applied under that direct comparison approach that I spoke about are as of 2016. So the price that's applied to that house that's 7 years old versus the price that's applied to that house that's built today, the same sales are going to be used to determine the assessed value of that, but there may be variables on terms of the physical build of that home that differ. So the year built, quality of construction, size, all of those things could differ in their assessed value, but the sales that we use have to be from that 2016 market.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Reeve, to Jeremy. Yeah, thanks for being here, because I've had questions, like ever since our tax bills went out, had a lot of farmers and landowners in our ward quite concerned about things. Now, I guess my question would be, it seems that folks that have built a new house or bought a property, a farm, they've gotten caught. Like, I know you've explained that you've used 2016 assessment. It doesn't look that way. $1 million built house assessed at $850,000 is not a 216 assessment. I know another existing $1 million house that's assessed at less than 500. You know, they're going to get the shock, but that's fine. But there is a difference right now, and then they're being taxed at a mill rate used for our 2006 or 23 budget, and they are paying huge taxes, whereas others, you know, they went up a certain amount, but these folks went up an awful lot more. And like, I'm seeing that. I understand what you said, but it's hard for me to understand because there's a difference.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, if you had an answer for that.
Yeah, I can comment on that. And again, I can't really give you a specific answer to that. It sounds like a property-specific issue. And my suggestion would be, if there is a property that they feel they could not have reasonably sold their home based on the assessed value we have on it today on that 2016 market. So if there's a new build and you're saying it's assessed for $800,000, and in 2016 it would not have been worth that based on comparable properties that did sell, that is when they should put in a request for reconsideration. Perhaps there is something incorrect on that property that needs to be adjusted or fixed. That would be my suggestion for them. It's free of charge to do that, and then that gives us an opportunity to review to determine if perhaps there needs to be some fine-tuning or tweaking or a fix issued on that specific property.
Yeah, I asked them to go ahead with it, and they said they would, so
Okay.
I'm hoping. Another one, sorry, may I carry on? Another one is just 95 acres of bush, and they purchased it for, $1.5 million, and their taxes are $24,000. Like, excuse me? I'm not sure, I'm sorry, I have not seen I don't know if it's 95 acres of residential or it's considered woodland. I'm not sure, so.
Yeah, so in that example, again, it would be property specific, so I can't really give you an answer without looking at that property, but there are a lot of variables that could fall into that wooded acreage. So let's say it's 100 acres and 95 of it is bush. Was that property purchased by a farmer? Was it purchased by a residential property owner? That would determine which tax class it falls into. Is it falling into the farm tax class? Is it falling into the residential tax class? As another opportunity, perhaps that owner could consider the managed forest program. If they've got 100 acres of land and 95 of it is treed, and they're not farming that property, to me, that sounds like an opportunity to perhaps participate in that program, which would be a tax savings to them. So there are opportunities for them to potentially have some tax savings as a result of that. But that's something, again, that they could put in a request for reconsideration, determine everything is correct. Perhaps something needs to be changed or applied in terms of the classification. But without looking at that property specifically, I unfortunately can't
I
really give you a
understand.
clear answer.
I understand that, and I'm going to have to get talking with those folks. May I have one more? Oh, go ahead.
Does anybody else have,
I'll ask later.
anybody else have questions? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I'm a little concerned with the number of farms and the residential, being, the assessment's very close. I know that the farm mill rate is 25%. I haven't done the figures, but I'm just a little concerned. I know what the taxation in the farm ward of ours, East Wabash, was extremely high compared to the other wards. Now, you've got 407 farms, but there's probably only 150 farmers, because many own multiple farms. I'm hoping that they're not burdened by an unnecessary amount compared to others. And I ask that because, well, I haven't, maybe our finance director can help there, but I haven't done the figures, so I don't know. But just looking at that, it kind of worries me.
Yeah, I don't think that's a question I could necessarily
not,
answer,
yeah.
but perhaps your finance
So
group.
fair enough.
Okay. Did you have Councillor Wright, please?
Yeah, I'm curious about or how you MPAC distinguishes between a property would be based on residential classification or rental classification. Like, say, someone buys a house, they could rent it out as an entire house, they could renovate it, put in 2 units or 3 units or 4 units, like, just curious when that switches over.
Sure, so it's based on the number of units. So if you were to purchase a home and you decided you were going to rent that out as an investment property, that home is still assessed as a residential property, falls into the residential tax class. When you get into having 8 or more units within a structure, that's when the valuation approach flips to the income approach. And at that point in time, we look at the rents to determine the value. If you purchase something such as a triplex or a fourplex, we have coding that reflects that, showing it as a fourplex, fiveplex, sixplex, but they're still valued in the residential tax class.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. When you're assessing farms, you've got 2 different farms, and one got sold, so you're using that pricing. If it got sold before 2016, then you have a better idea. But you do you realize you can't compare 2 farms? It's like 2 people are not the same. If 2 farms are not the same.
Sure.
There's so many variables in there, like drainage and workable land, and there's tons of other hills or flat. Do you go to that extent to differentiate?
Yeah, so in the land valuation, it's not strictly a blanket approach that all farmland has the same rate applied. We have a soil classification that falls, and that soil classification takes into consideration the exact variables you've just said. So tiling, hills, rock, stone, what type of dirt it is, what type of soil it is, physically what type of soil classification it is. And all of those variables determine which classifications fall onto a property. If you have a 100-acre farm, it could have 50 acres of Class 1 soil and 50 acres of Class 2 soil. And maybe that's because the front of the farm is hillier than the back of the farm. And in that case, there would be 2 different rates that are applied for each of those 50 acres on that one single farm. So it is not a blanket approach where all farmland has the exact same rate per acre. It's based on an individual review of that farm.
Okay, and if in doubt, then a reconsideration would be...
Absolutely, yeah. If
Yeah.
let's say there were 2 neighboring farmers side by side and both of them had a 100-acre plot of land, and one, for some reason, wasn't tiled, it was much wetter soil, one's more loamy ground, one was more clay, chances are not the same soil class would apply to both of those properties as a result of that. And if they were seeing that their assessed values were the same, then that would be a trigger for them to put in the request for reconsideration, and we determine if maybe there needs to be an adjustment to the soil classification on that property.
Okay, there's more than just soil class, though. It's hilly.
Yep, all of that falls into
All
those,
right,
yep.
good, thanks.
Councillor Van Henderson, please.
Yes, this is a follow-up, actually, two questions, please. On Councillor Palmer's question about soil and the land class, but you were saying you were basing your assessment on sales. So are you doing and the sales prices in the area and the soil classifications?
Yes.
Because land prices went up so much lately.
Yeah, so the increase in land prices since 2016 are obviously not factored into the rates we're currently applying, because we need to use those sales from that 2016 year and buffer year, give or take 1 year. Soil classification falls into the assessment of the land, and that those sales that have occurred. So if you were to sell 100 acres of land that were class 1 soil in 2016, we would use that as a factor to say this is what 100 acres of class 1 land sold for in 2016, and that would be obviously part of the analysis we would use in determining rates for class 1 soil. One sale does not make a market. There needs to be several sales included for us to use that for analysis.
Okay. Another question I have is about, we are recently faced with a lot of severances. So there's 1 acre, 2 acre, 5 acre, 10 acre severances. Only if it is a farmer, they would be classed partial residential and farmland. But if it's not a farmer, the residential rate would apply to the whole property, to all, say, 10 acres? Or 5 acres, or?
So the farm tax class is an incentive program.
Yeah.
So in order to receive the farm tax rate, you need to qualify for that through AgriCorp. So you can be a self-proclaimed farmer and not actually qualify based on the requirements from AgriCorp. As a result of that, what happens is we assess the property as farmland, and it's up to the owner to file through AgriCorp to receive that farm tax rate. So it remains farmland in the residential tax class. In terms of a severance, though, if a property was farmed before and it's being severed between a farmer to a farmer, it would remain farm.
Right, but if it's not a farmer that is doing that property, how
It
would
would,
it be taxed?
if it's not a farmer and they're severing property, it would be residential in most instances.
Doesn't matter how big the property, the severed property would be.
Yeah, it would be dependent on the ownership and how that
Yeah.
property is being used. So in the case of development land, for instance, if a company were to buy a property that was previously farmed and they're no longer going to be farming that land and it'll be slated for future development, it's going to be split up into individual lots. That parcel is no longer actively being farmed. It is not owned by a farmer. So in that instance, it would not be classed as farmland in the farm tax class.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? That was very self-explanatory. You really helped us out in a lot of questions. It is real good information that we got, because I had to go through this with a piece of property, and just the way you said it there, that's exactly how they handled it, and just somebody had made a little slip, and they went back and looked at the file. So I'm glad how you put that out there. It's exactly, they do it that way. So appreciate that very much. So if there's no other questions, we just want to thank you, Jeremy, for coming and showing us, and I'm sure Carson will be lining you up when you're told to go and do some changes again.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank
we'll
you
be
very
happy
much.
to come back. Thank you very much.
That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives the delegation presentation from Jeremy Gow, Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, regarding the property assessment framework in Ontario for information purposes. May I have a mover? Councillor Wright, Councillor Van Henderson, all in favor? Carried. Reports, Finance 2023-26 year-to-date budget presentation. We look forward to presentation, Director Towns, at this time.
Good morning. Thank you, council. Where am I here, Carson? All right. Thank you very much. I have a lot of information to go through, so please bear with me, and we'll try and make this as less painful as possible for everybody. I'm here today to present you with our 2023 year-to-date, three-quarter. Our target is 75%. Please keep in mind, as we are a municipality, we have a lot of seasonal operations. We're kind of in the upswing of something and in the downswing of some other areas. So what staff is doing right now is mitigating any overage items for the remainder of the year. And this should help us set the base for the upcoming 2024 budget.
Excuse me?
Yeah, I just would like to know, can we ask questions during the
Sure.
presentation or
What I'm
after?
gonna
Whatever.
Try and do is as we're going through, I'm going to bring up some of the variances. I'll try and do some explanations the best I can. But please, yes, while I'm on that slide, if you have any questions, please bring it up. If I can't answer, we'll ask one of the other directors responsible for that department to provide any explanations for you.
Thank you.
All right. So our 2023 budget was adopted April 3rd. We had total expenditures of $21 million with a $17.6 million operating budget, 3.4 almost for capital. Total revenue stream, including our Ontario Municipal Partnership Funds, gas tax, et cetera, 13.7 million. And throughout taxation, we required a levy of 7.2 million. As you can see within here, our total operating expenses year-to-date at September 30th, 66.5%. Total capital at 17, and a total overall capital and operating at 41.92%. So as you'll recall from our budget process, we broke it down into subcategories as per the municipal financial reporting requirements. So our general government, we've received 91.8% of our revenues, and our expenses to date were 84%. Within that, we've received three of our four payments from the OMPF. We've received the $4.2 million from the airport land sales, which is why our revenues are high. We have 4.2 out of 5, or 4.2 out of 6 in one transaction. We've paid off our OCIF loan in full, which was for our grader and our fire buyouts. And within all this, all year, this will be pretty well every slide that I go through, is most transfers are done at year end to and from reserves. Within our council budget, we've at 81% of our expenditures. Our council contingency, which is the donations that we provide during the budget process, we've hit 51%. Travel and training is at 75%. This includes your honorariums, which is your meeting pay. And during our budget process, we did a transfer from reserves to help offset some of the cost. You're not seeing that in the revenue at this point in time because, again, most of those transfers happen at year end. Under administration, you can see we're 34% for revenue, 69 for our expenses. This includes the town hall and the theater as well. Again, transfers will be coming at the end of the year. Our training is we're a little bit under on our training right now. However, there's a lot of fall and late fall training that is coming forward, and we will likely be very well on track for that. We have some exceptional legal fees this year. Our health and safety, we have a vacancy within the department, so some works were not completed. We're hoping to resolve that here in the very near future. Sorry, bear with me. All right. Our policing. Our revenues are very low, 3.8%, and just to let council know too that there have been some significant changes towards that. I'm not sure if you've received the emails. The profit sharing for fingerprinting, all of the record checks, we won't be receiving as much as we have been in the past. I think it was reduced by 25%, I believe. And as for the expenses, we've only actually had one quarter billing. Didn't quite honestly have the opportunity to indulge as to why we haven't received the billings, but we have not received them. I can confirm that, which is why we're still low. However, those are target sets. We will see that billed one way or another. As for the fire department, very slightly different than what I'm used to. I'm single tier from where I come from, so this is very interesting. We're looking as if all the wages for calls are on target. Central Huron, we are exceptionally high, as you can well see, and that was just simply due to a higher volume of calls in the Central Huron area. And for ACW, we're looking, we're very low on the revenues, and I confirm that we just have some outstanding invoices. So we will be getting caught up on that in the very, very near future. Fire department operating. As you've noticed, the memberships are almost double. New fire chief on board, and he has registered. All fire chiefs are now registered with the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs. So moving forward in future years, those will be adequately budgeted for. The equipment repair and maintenance, we've had several unforeseen repairs that were required, and speaking with Chief Redmond, we will be budgeting accordingly for that for next year. Fuel, well, we all know that fuel's gone, unpredictable fuel costs are have shown an impact, and same with the cost of food. And it should be noted that we had a major water leak in the Blythe Fire Hall, which caused some extensive damages that were unplanned for. Building operations, that's our CBO, Chief Building Official. Our revenues come from zoning certificates, building, plumbing, septic permits, and severances. Just permits are down mainly due to economy, high construction material costs, delay in getting material, and the ability to find contractors have set us back a little bit within that department. Property standards and animal control. The extended dog counter program, we extended the actual dog counter that was knocks door to door. There are additional expenses within that as we prolonged the contract. However, those costs were easily offset by the additional revenues we received from the sale of dog licensing. Public Works and Roads, that's your roads, ditches, culverts, sidewalks, parking lots, winter control, special events. We didn't anticipate any revenue, however, we did receive a small amount of revenue from the special event, the car show, and that was based on them requiring road closures, so we had to staff that with Public Works staff to ensure the safety of our residents. And for our expenses right now, I'm sure council is very well aware that there have been some vacancies within the department, and that'll likely even itself out in the very near future as well. For street lighting, it's the only item that we have that's area rated, which is 6525 per year. And these revenues are collected through the area rating and actual hydro costs. Our expenses are currently slightly below where our market. However, there have been some repairs done rather recently, which we have yet to be invoiced for. Our water and wastewater operational costs are to be on a full cost recovery. We're well on target within everything. And again, as you can see, we haven't been billed for our third quarter yet. Without that, everything there is well within our limits. Stormwater management is both Wingham and Blythe, and that's as simply just storm drains. We're all familiar with that. Waste management, our garbage collection, our Wingham landfill, and monitoring of the East Wawanash landfill, and the shared responsibility of the Blythe Hewlett landfill site. Excuse me. Increased recycled materials, it actually surprised me when I went through and I down on this. We've received an exceptional amount of money from Stewardship Ontario. I was quite pleased to see. We've the recycling program is doing very, very well, and we are receiving some funds for that up until likely next year, unfortunately, when the recycling program changes through the province. However, on top of our good revenues from the stewardship, the increase of bag tag sales and blue bin sales here at the town office have grown significantly throughout the year. Sorry. So cemeteries, we have the two, Goliath and Wingham. And just one thing I really got to point out is that the niche plaques, because this has come up before, the purchaser pays us for them, we buy them. It's a straight in-out. So that's why you're going to see this exceptional revenue stream. Because the BAO has a different reporting model than municipal reporting, financial reporting. So we actually have to report it as an expense and a revenue as for those purposes, which is also another reason why we have separate bank accounts for cemeteries. Just a different reporting measure. Okay, getting into the capital projects, what I have listed here for your viewing pleasure. These are only capital projects where we've actually had current expenditures as of September 30th. On this October 2nd council meeting, Director Fertney provided a activity report, which included current status of all of his capital projects. So I don't necessarily feel that I need to get into any of the specifics on this unless either of you council members wish to.
Yes, please.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Reeve. Yeah, the accessibility ramp, why is it 19,000 more? We all understood that, okay, 150,000 was it.
Yep.
Okay.
So through you, Reeve, to Councillor Palmer, there was some money that was allocated last year that was incompletely spent, and that 150 that was approved was for this year, was for the completion of the project, right? So 150 was budgeted for 2023. However, there was monies allocated last year as well, which was carried over to complete the project.
Yeah, okay, I'm still disappointed that it's above what we expected. Yeah.
Unless, Director Ferdy, did you have anything else to add to that, or no? Okay, thank you. Is that okay, Councillor Palmer?
Has to be.
Thank you. All right, so we're moving on into the child services. I broke this down. There's 4 or 5 different areas. We have the main center, the early on, Maitland River before and after, Sacred Heart before and after, and early learning. We're a little bit all over the place, but as we well know, the child care services are funded. And it's a very unique program. The more participants we have, the more staff we have to have, and it, as we all know, it's funded through the county. So those aren't really concerns. Getting into recreation programs, we have the actual programs, which is your day camps, your car washes, your general operating programs. We have aquatics, we have fitness, and then our administration. We have the campground, we got parks, which was actually quite interesting for me. The revenue in the parks is essentially all from ball field rentals. I thought that was very interesting, very neat, and good to see. We have our arena in Blyth, our arena in Wingham, and for the most part, everything's well in on track. Getting into our overall facilities, I broke out all the facilities from operationals. What I'm going to make note of is the childcare, as we are at the 90%. We have some additional building maintenance, labor and supplies, and increased janitorial supplies. Those are the major factors within that increase. And as for the Memorial Hall, we had a rooftop leak, and that caused us some significant staff time and some significant repairs that were required. And as for economic development, we are exceptionally high under the expenses. However, those costs will be recovered with the proceeds of the sale of Hutton Heights. There's about $61,000 closely that was we've invested as a municipality into that so far, and with the sale of those lands, that'll be fully recovered, and that department is expected to be well within on track. So as for that, our next steps are going to be, all staff is going to monitor our revenue expenses closely to year end. November 6th, we will be presenting council with the first draft of the user fees. And again, I just make sure that you understand that the transfers to and from reserves generally all happen at year end. Some do happen throughout the year, but a majority of them happen at year end. Staff is currently working on the draft 2024 budget, and our first meeting is scheduled to be on December 8th. So with that, I know nobody asked any questions along the way, really, but yes, please.
You always transfer at the end of the year. I can understand that, but could it be useful to do it at least biannually?
Yes, through the Reeve to Councilor Palmer, it is best practice to do them specific ones at the end of the year. Some of the operating ones, like when staff comes to council asking for an emergency repair and we got to pull money from reserves, as those transactions happen, those ones usually do go through. But all the major ones that we do within the operating budget, the planned ones, typically get done at year end. It just tends to be best practice.
Okay.
But however, there have been some that I have done. It's error of judgment, right? But generally, end of year is best practice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for our, go ahead, Deputy Reeve, please.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve. I'm curious about just the way things are grouped together. In some instances, like in Public Works, everything comes under one category, but recreation seems to be split into 5 different pieces and differentiated between Wingham and Blythe, and I just wonder why that is grouped out separately when other shared or other multiple location services are not.
Okay, through you, Reeve, Heifer to Deputy Reeve Falconer. Public Works, for example, it's in the classification on how we report. As for the recreation piece, why I broke it out by arena, it's just to break it out so we understand, that council understands which is which. If you prefer, I can do it all as one. It really doesn't matter to me. It's just, we have a lot of operations, a lot of different facilities, which is why as well, as within Public Works and within Fire, I actually broke out all of the facilities. I broke out the facilities separately. It was just a different approach for us to see what the bigger picture.
Thank you. And go ahead, Councilor Wright.
Yeah, just a comment, and I think there's probably an opportunity to change things up a little bit, but to your comment about the project being over budget for the year, it's usual, to be honest, that projects go over multiple years, right? And the important thing is that the allocated budget for that project obviously isn't exceeded for the project, right? But then in order to track that, you have to have a multi-year view, both on what the expenses were and what the budget was allocated to that project in any particular year, right? So I think to Councilor Palmer's point, when we're looking at projects, we aren't giving a multi-year view. We aren't giving a summary of here's all the expenses to date versus all the budget allocated to date. And so I think we need that to track, to see if projects are on budget. Operational doesn't matter. Expenses by year, revenues by year, it's easy. But projects, I think we would like, it'd be beneficial if we could get, summary to date for projects, all funding, all expenses.
Through you, Reeve, to Councilor Mitch-Wright. Thank you. I will take that into consideration. And yes, I agree. That's not a problem.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Well, this is you put the stuff through to us fast, but is laid out, and really appreciate that, and that's great. So if there's no other questions, I'd like to go that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the year-to-date budget presentation presented October 20th, 2023 for information purposes. May I have a mover? Councilor Palmer, Councilor Whitfield, all in favor? Carried. Okay. 5.2, Finance 2023-27 Budget and Strategic Planning Survey Results. Okay, well, so CAO and Mr. Towns are going to present this to us.
All right, thank you again. CAO Evans and myself are here today to present to you the 2024 Township of North Huron Budget and Strategic Planning Survey results. As you well know, we did an online survey, and we had paper copies available at the libraries, and during our strategic planning sessions in Goliath, we had paper copies available for our residents, and we also had tablets available. They could fill them out online. So we've completed the surveys on that end, on both sides. So what we received was 47 responses. As you can see from the presentation that you've been provided, most of them, 31 were urban residential, 8 rural, 7 farmland, and 1 commercial property. And this one slide here was something that I found, again, pretty interesting, is the majority of the residents in the township of North Huron have been here 11 plus years. So it's not a transient community, it's a long-term living community. Within that, we have a wide, various range of age groups as well. Very diversified community. Under 30, 15 of them. 30 to 50, 14. 54 to 64, 8. 64 to 75, 14. 75 plus are 3, and prefer not to say 5.
Or don't know.
Or don't know. Yeah. Okay, so we got into, we asked from the perspective of the survey partakers, recognizing not everything is under municipal control, what was the most important concern currently facing the township of North Huron? Coming in at 33 was the cost of property taxes, and general infrastructure at 28. Two standard concerns from pretty well any community, right? Within the survey as well, we asked the participants to rate their satisfaction of various municipal services that we're delivering. So I'm not going to go through each slide. I'll go through it a little bit, but I think it's very self-representative. But 1 is very unsatisfied. 5 is very satisfied. So we went through the water, wastewater, the storm water and drainage management, our fire protection services, policing services, bylaw enforcement, library services, garbage and recycling, recreation facilities, recreation programming, child care and family programming, the maintenance of our green space and trails, the maintenance of our cemeteries, our building permit and inspection process, the maintenance of our roads, maintenance of our streetlights, sidewalks, and paths, our annual property tax amount, economic development and tourism, our customer service and public engagement. So I think those are, you have had an opportunity to review those. We asked our residents if they felt that they were receiving good value for their property taxes, and unfortunately it was a no. We asked where you would like to see more money spent, more tax dollars spent. 19 said they do not want to spend any more, and 18 said public works. When we asked where we'd like to see less tax dollars spent, it was governance, recreational facilities, and I don't want to spend less. In order to balance the budget, which options would you support the most? At the 19 was increased fees and charges, and at 17 was reduce existing service levels to reduce current taxes. We identified that there's a limited number of ways to address increased costs for municipal services, and asked, in order to balance the budget, what options would you support the least? And the main one was increasing property taxes, followed by reducing existing service levels to reduce current taxes.
Sorry, I'm just noticing the last two, that this chart, it said the second least popular thing was to increase user fees and charges, but to balance the budget, that was the top choice on the previous slide. Okay.
It's not my,
Yeah, it's not your answers.
so how do you think property taxes are within the township of North Huron? Major consensus of too high. You going down or am I? No, right, I'm still going? Sorry. I'm just getting dry here, sorry. All right, so the strategic plan pillars, we had 6 pillars: economy, community, governance and modernization, infrastructure, services, and environment. We asked what the top 5 most important were to the participant. We had review service agreements with neighboring municipalities on an annual basis and recommend amendments as appropriate. Continue to be involved in physician recruitment efforts, and identify and review cost recovery opportunities. Those were the 5 most important to the survey partakers. The least important to the participant was explore opportunities for public transportation links to major hub with supporting funding, sorry. Explore adding more EV charging stations in the township at a cost recovery basis. Develop a plan associated costs to update township's digital processes, and conduct a rural water supply study for firefighting. So through the 47 survey results we got, there was an opportunity for them to just put in general comments. We filtered them out for obvious reasons. But the most significant common thread for comments was road and sidewalk repairs and maintenance, adding bicycle lanes, taxes are too high, not enough childcare with the several requests to expand into Blythe, increased user pay, programs need to run on a full cost recovery basis, end competition with private business, storm drain management in Blythe, management plans for parks and trails, new playground equipment in Wingham, limit services and stick with reduced budget, and attracting smaller businesses. So I'm going to hand it over to Dwayne, CAO Evans, to go through a summary of the public input of the 2024 budget.
Thanks, Chris. So just for council to put things into perspective in terms of, our next presenter, as you're aware, is Rob Browning from Capstone Solutions. He's going to be presenting your final strategic plan. And that's going to basically chart and set your course for the next 4 years. In addition to that, as you're aware, at a staff level, we're certainly engaged in the development of the 2024 budget process. So for lack of a better word, this is a bit of an opportunity to check in and to see in terms of, from a strategic plan perspective and in terms of where we're going on our 2024 budget. So what I wanted to do here was basically just, we have, as Director Towns has indicated, we received this online information both on the budget and on the strategic plan. In addition to that, and as you're aware, we had the town hall public meeting. So again, it's an opportunity to kind of, where are we going, where are we at? So just in terms of what I've done here is kind of a bit of I'll call it a recap in terms of what Director Towns has presented, but in terms of what is this telling us? What is the public telling us as a municipality? And as Councillor Wright has indicated, there's some conflicting information in the data, but I think though it does give you some input, at least from the public's perspective, in terms of where they would like the municipality to go, which again goes back to your strategic plan. So just in terms of going back to the top 5 concerns, as Director Towns has indicated, the top 5 concerns that the public has expressed, and this is, again, based on a limited sample, so, you know, you have to give that weighting as well in terms of, is this, you know, representative of the municipality as a whole? That said, it is input from the public, and this is input from your ratepayers. These are individuals who are living and working in your municipality. So their top 5 concerns are property taxes, general infrastructure, and I'm just going to suggest that general infrastructure are things like roads, okay? I don't know what it is, but I'm guessing could be what it is. Growth, development, and sustainability. And if you look through the data, you'll see housing comes through there a little bit in terms of housing accommodations. Crime and criminal activity and social issues are kind of the public's top 5 concerns, or in terms of what we're hearing. Thanks. In terms of the survey says spend more on, well, first of all, the public is saying don't spend more, okay? And that's understandable. But they're also, in terms of their next highest ranked, if you're going to, I'll say, spend more, let's take the first one out of the equation, they're saying that public works is the second where they would like more money spent. So again, I think that might tie back to the general infrastructure and roads, for example. I'm just using roads, that's generalizing, but the next area that the public has identified as a priority service, an area that they would like to see more money spent on, is daycare. They view that as a very important and vital service in the community. And fourth is bylaw enforcement. And I've heard some comments in terms of right now we have we respond, our bylaw complaint system is built on, or our bylaw services are built on a complaint system. We don't proactively go out and patrol, but if we receive a complaint, we receive the complaint, we research the complaint and act on the complaint accordingly. Do we need to think about bylaw enforcement services more of a proactive in terms of a bylaw enforcement out walking the streets or going around the municipality enforcing property standards, enforcing parking, okay?
Yeah, I was just, if you don't mind, I was just gonna say, I've talked to people about that too, and I think there needs to be a bit of a hybrid approach based on kind of what the bylaw is. So for example, you know, stuff like property standards, animal control, and stuff like that, I think doing a complaint style response is fine with stuff like that. But if you get into breaking, say, parking bylaws, a complaint is never, the person is gone by the time the complaint ever comes in and it's responded to. So there's some bylaws that you can only enforce if it's kind of in real time and patrolled, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, a valid point. So, you know, is that something that we need to get more into and have a deeper conversation about as we go forward with our 2024 budget process? Do we need to consider ramping up or increase our budget for bylaw enforcement? That's a conversation to be had. In terms of spending less, general government or governance, I have termed it, that was that was the number one. I think it was 30 respondents indicated less on governance. Recreation facilities was number 2. And recreational facilities, you'll notice, is different than recreation programs. Recreation facilities, in my opinion, are your buildings, your structures, and those sort of things. And the public is saying you need to spend less on your facilities. Third is do not spend less. And again, that goes back to conflicting information. The fourth area is recreation programs. Public saying spend less on recreation programs. And the fifth is to spend less on libraries. And in terms of our library system, our library, at their last council meeting, county librarians are here, and so our financial responsibility is for the buildings and heat and that sort of stuff. They provide the service. So, and perhaps there's in terms of the public's understanding, in terms of who's actually funding that service. But in terms of the survey, when you look at it, and this kind of again goes back to Councillor Mitch in terms of, but it does indicate that increasing fees and charges, there seems to be an acceptance by the community that we should increase our fees and charges, that we're not charging enough for some of our services. And coupled with that, the public is saying along the lines, if increasing fees and charges isn't enough to lower our taxes, then we want you to look at reducing existing service levels. So clearly there's a message here in terms of the public is certainly looking for lower taxes, and if that means increasing fees and charges, they seem to be, at least based on these respondents, that's acceptable. And if you can't get there through fees and charges, then you need to start looking at your service levels. And as Director Towns, I believe, has indicated, the fees and charges bylaw will be coming to council on November the 6th. And I think what you will, at least I'm fully anticipating, you're going to see some significant adjustments to those fees and charges from a staff recommendation. So there have been like COLA adjustments. These could be substantial adjustments that we will be asking for council's consideration.
Why did you include COLA in this?
No. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
As an example, why?
As an example,
Yeah, why?
historically, we have looked at our fees and charges and we've adjusted them by COLA only. I
Oh,
think,
okay,
sorry.
I got you.
Councillor Van Henderson has a question for you, please.
Thank you. No, it's not a question. It's more like, I think residents are looking for user pay. Like if you use the services, you have to pay for the services, and if you don't use them, you don't have to pay. So to equalize the cost of programs out and what you're using for whatever you're using, the membership, or if you need a building permit or the use of the building inspector, then yeah, that's probably what they're looking for. I understand that.
Yeah, and I'm going to come back to Councillor Van Henderson's
Yeah.
comment at the end here.
Thank you.
So, but it's a good point. So again, that's when you sit back and you look at the data and you look at the results and you look at what the public is telling you, that's kind of what the public is telling you from a budget perspective. We also asked for input on the strategic plan. So when we said to the public, from the strategic plan, the draft strategic plan that we put out to the public, here's a draft strategic plan, we would like your input. What do you see as the most important? Where do you think council should focus? The top 5, council, or the public is telling us to review agreements with neighboring municipalities annually and amend as needed. Second, continue to be involved in physician recruitment. Identify and review cost recovery opportunities, explore feasibility of expanding daycare services, and explore opportunities for waste reduction. So if you think about the budget survey results, and then you think about the feedback you're getting on the strategic plan, what you're getting through the budget feedback and you're getting through the strategic plan, there seems to be an alignment here happening. Clearly, daycare is coming through. Fees and services, or fees and charges is coming through. Waste reduction is coming through there. So you're starting to see an alignment between the budget input and the strategic plan input. So moving on, in terms of what
Can I
does,
ask a clarification?
Yep.
What do you think they mean by waste reduction? Is it, because that's probably not physical waste, right? That's probably wasted effort, wasted time?
so through the Reeve, if you want my thoughts on it, I think it has to do with our waste collection program in terms
Oh,
of,
okay,
like we don't have composting, for
okay.
example. This is just, our recycle bins, our smaller recycle bins at a staff level, we do hear complaints from the public, my recycle bin's too small. You can go to much larger recycle bins, But there's a cost associated with that. Perhaps if people had larger recycle bins, they would recycle more. I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm just throwing that out there in terms of waste reduction.
Okay.
Deputy Reeve, please.
Yeah, just a comment through the Riviera. Yeah, I've got people on my street that have 5 recycle boxes out, and I have 3. You know, so a larger one might suffice. Obviously that lines up. If you've got more than one recycle box, then a larger one would be. There you go.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Isn't the province going to look after recycling programs next year so that if you have your empty pop bottles that you can return them to the stores for with a dime or something like that? Isn't that happening soon? So that we will have less recycle opportunities necessary.
If you read in terms of there are changes, but in terms of maybe Director Fortney, in terms of the details, I have a different understanding,
Okay.
but
through your effort to Council Visitor. So our the producer responsibility legislation for the province is going forward. Certainly, our transition date should be want to go through with this would be in 2025. But we do have an opportunity to opt out of the system should we choose to do so. So I'll be bringing back a report, and then probably first thing in the new year, asking for council's direction on how they want to proceed. The program will certainly allow for more items to be recycled. However, there's a real constrictor being on the contamination rate, and that's where the extra fees and charges could be applied against the municipality. So we're going to have to kind of boil that all down and do a comparison. And then also compare that against our current contract and what it says with the company Waste Management.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Okay.
so in terms of least important, again, the public, again, this is, again, survey results on the draft strategic plan, and from the public's perspective, again, based on the respondents, they're indicating or suggesting that the least important to them is to explore opportunities for public transportation links, exploring adding more electric vehicle charging stations. That's not identified by the public as a priority. And even, I mean, as you're aware, in the strategic plan, it even indicated on a cost recovery basis, but the public says there doesn't seem to be an interest. They don't identify that as a high priority. There's other priorities that, going back to previous slide, that they've identified. Developing a plan to update township digital processes. So that's modernization efforts that we've been doing internally. And the last one is conducting a rural water supply study for firefighting. So but again, it also, in terms of people's understanding of what that is and what, we as council, you have an understanding of that, certainly through Chief Redmond. But this is, again, just what we're hearing from the public. So kind of if you were to summarize a little bit in terms of most important, least important, and that in terms of the strategic plan, through the strategic plan, there seems to be, what I'm gleaming, I guess, from it is that the municipality, to continue to grow and develop, to maintain infrastructure and assets, to ensure safety and security. But it was interesting because they're not, the data isn't saying increase spending on that. It's saying just ensure safety and security. Okay, so they're not, the public doesn't seem to be saying we want more or that we feel unsafe, but we don't want less. Daycare services are certainly important.
Refaster?
That comes through.
Thank you. Yeah, where was the question about safety and security? It was a policing question, and I think the policing question or the policing results really are going back, for what I hear all the time, going back to the very unfair difference between the policing cost, and that is what I hear all the time. It's not the safety and security, it is the excessive amount of people in East Wabash are paying for it policing right now. And why that is, and why we can't put the policing cost on residential, because we have all those different, like residential, commercial, farm, in our tax rate. I think I never had an idea that it was for crime and security, or safety and security, the policing
Crime against
issues.
criminal activity.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think as well, what we're hearing is in terms of evaluate recreational facilities and programs. Again, it goes back to, if you remember, spend less, recreation facilities was second and recreation programs was fourth or third. I don't have that slide right in front of me, but so that's an area I think that the public is suggesting that needs to be looked at. Too much governance, and that can be in the context whether it's political governance, whether it's administrative governance. And we heard at the town hall public meeting where the size of our council. So what does governance mean in that context? Who knows?
Excuse
Go
me.
ahead, we've got two questions here.
Yeah, I'm, through you, Reeve, I took the response from the crowd. It was it was also on the amount of management it takes to run the municipality. I personally didn't hear anybody complaining how much they were going to save by changing the number of council members. So it was more on every manager had an assistant manager, and the assistant manager had two sub-managers, and then that was what I took out of it. That's just my opinion.
Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
I agree with Deputy Reeve. That's exactly how it came across. You know, maybe one person, if we could cut a couple of councillors out, but that's neither here nor there in the budget, and it was explained at the time. A little bit of saving like that means Zippo in a $21 million budget, so, but I do agree that I think it was more from a staffing standpoint.
So again, it's not clear in terms of the information that we've got. What the public is indicating is general governance is the area that they want to see the most, or it's the one least reduced spending, the highest ranked in terms of reducing spending in governance. Evaluating new initiatives as well. I think that comes through there. And again, and we've already touched on this, increasing fees and charges, or more this user pay notion, and not just we have user pay for water and wastewater, but perhaps that needs to be, and we do have cost recovery programs, but do we need to, are we charging enough, I guess? So just in terms of going forward, I would suggest, for me, these are kind of some things that perhaps to think about when I look at the budget data and then I look at the strategic plan data. So, and also keeping in mind the 2024 budget process. Again, I think, when you look at the two sets of data, they seem to be pointing that to continue to invest in growth and development. I think, the recent initiatives that we've been working on, housing projects and that, I would suggest that the public seems to be saying they like that. That's good. Increase fees and charges to lower taxes, evaluate merit of new initiatives. And the reason why that one's there is because the public transportation links, it would be a new initiative. The electric vehicle charging stations, it's been around. It's something that we're involved in, but it's not something that we've really gone gun-ho on. And the public is saying those from the strategic plan are kind of less, they're not as important in the public's minds. Continue to advocate for daycare resources. And we've done in terms of, as you're aware, in terms of we've gone to Roma and presented to the minister on that, and we continue to work with the county on that. Invest in safety and security, again, you know, keep us safe. Evaluate governance spending, and in terms of what governance is, that's not clearly defined, but they're indicating that general governance too high of spending. And evaluate recreation facilities and program spending. So that's basically a bit of a summation in terms of the budget data and the strategic plan, input on the strategic plan data. Unless there's any questions, I'll turn it back to the Reeve and.
Councillor Wright, please.
Yeah, so I guess I just want to connect the dots on a few things, right? So, because again, I'm still kind of learning how things work. So we had feedback from the public in a survey. One of the feedback things was potentially increasing user fees, but council never said, yeah, that's a good idea, we should go ahead and look at that, but it seems like staff is already going down that road. So I'm wondering why staff is putting their energy into that when it wasn't out of the direction of council, and why specifically that thing as opposed to, you know, a bunch of the other things which came up in the survey.
So through you, Reeve, in terms of, so we on an annual basis do a review of our fees and charges bylaw, and it is something that's brought to council on an annual basis, and it's brought forward at the time of the budget process. And once the fees and charges bylaw or once the fees and charges are set, then we use those fees and charges to prepare the 2024 budget. So it's not something that it's something that we typically do and continue to do on an annual basis. So we're not doing it, I guess, based on the direction from here or from the public. We're doing it because that's a best practice that we do on an ongoing basis.
Can I follow up, but you said you're going to take a significantly different tack at it this year.
So through the Reeve, in terms of given what we're hearing from this input and from the public, we will be bringing back a fees and charges bylaw that for council's consideration. And as I've indicated, in terms in the past, we've just tacked on COLA. It's just been, you know, we charge $100, we're going to tack on COLA. But just what the public is saying here and what we're hearing from the public at a staff level from this data is basically, you know, we need to do a deep dive into those fees and charges. So we as staff are going to do that and are in the process of doing that. We will be bringing that to you as council, and you will have to decide whether or not you feel that's the path we need to go or not.
Okay. And then the only other thing I wanted to say is, and I don't know how the rest of council feels, the last bullet point, we went through that, spent a tremendous amount of time, last budget evaluation, recreational facilities, and programming spending. Personally, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on that this budget, because not much has changed for the, in 12 months, I don't think, so just my thoughts on that.
Okay, were there any other questions for the two here? Seeing none. Finance 2023 Budget and Strategic Planning Survey results. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives the Budget and Strategic Planning Survey results presentation presented October 20th, 2023 for information purposes. May I have a mover? Councillor McBurnett, Dep Reeve. All in favor? Carried. Okay, at this time, thank you, folks. I invite Rob Browning to come up. Just before, I'd just like to just say a couple words here. I'd like to take this opportunity to provide some comments. Our council has now received a lot of public feedback. We received public input from the survey, as well as feedback from our public meeting that we held in Belgrade. as we go through our strategic plan with Rob, I would really like council to have one last look at the action items that we have included to make sure they align with what the public wants and our priorities as council. As a municipality, we need to utilize our staff resources and taxpayer dollars wisely. If there are action items that we as council believe are not going to be able to fund or support, we should move them from the plan now. This way, resources can be allocated to take action items that align with the desires of the public and our vision as a council. So with this, I'd like to ask Rob, and my reason for the last little bit there was I saw a couple things that came out through strongly in this survey about the EV stations and the transportation links that came through that the public, did they want them? And as I said, we had a lot of information that night in Belgrave. I guess I'm interpreting some of this stuff a little bit different than what some people that, than what some of the other counselors have noticed, but maybe I've seen it wrong. I had other things going through my mind maybe at that time too. That's fine. But at this time, I'd like to welcome Rob and look forward to what you have for us.
Thank you, Reeve, and good morning, council.
Good morning.
Good to see everyone again. Hopefully not for the last time, but I think for this project, maybe the last time. You've done a lot of work and you've got a lot of information this morning, so I'm going to really try and keep this high level because you've seen this already. So we really just need to affirm what's on paper. But I do want to just emphasize the process you went through because I think it was a good one, and you deserve credit for it because you collaboratively worked on this with staff in the beginning to get a good flavor of a lot of issues. You were able to communicate to staff your thoughts, and staff was in the room to hear them. And so as we as you move forward with your plan, staff have a good idea where council wants to go, and I think that's an important piece. The relationship between staff and council is an important one, and it's an important one to get work done during your term or any term of council. So kudos to you for that. So we've been through a couple of focus sessions and some public input sessions. You've heard a lot of the public input this morning, and I'm not going to rehash all of that approach. I'm going to kind of cut to the chase. After today, you'll have, it's your plan. You have an opportunity to make some adjustments, as the Revis said, and a final document will come to your council meeting on November 6th for your adoption. So that's what will come out of today. Your plan has your vision and mission statements and your principles and values, and then the 6 pillars that you agreed to: economy, community, governance and modernization, infrastructure, services, and environment. Oops. Obviously under each pillar is a number of goal statements, and you're going to have a look at those today to decide if they still resonate with you or not, and make a decision as a council. Obviously, there's a lot of follow-up that's required by staff on the actions that you adopt on November 6th, and they will have to come back with detailed reports on implementation, which includes, timing, resources, costing, and all those good pieces that you'll need to make decisions on. And again, we're still in the process. So, your vision statement stands as we talked about almost from the beginning. So, if there's any comments as we go through the slides, I'll just ask if there's any comments, or rather than read everything out again. I think you're all familiar with it. The mission pretty much says what you do, and that's deliver excellent and efficient services to the residents, businesses, and visitors. Your values are that you deliver service excellence, you do it in a team fashion, you're accountable and transparent, you're respectful, you have integrity, and you are engaging of the community. And you've demonstrated that already through the public input process. And then the principles that you've agreed to. So your first goal is the economy, obviously a priority for most organizations. And you've decided what areas that you think, that you believe are the strengths of your economy. The actions that you want to take under. So the other part I want to add is you've also acknowledged that you did a lot of work in the strategic plan, or the council of the day did a lot of work in the first strategic plan that needs to carry over, because to change a community takes years and years and years. So it's good that there's continuity and that you've recognized that as a council, that having some continuity between strategic plans is a benefit to the community. So you'll see that a lot of your actions are the next phases of work that was done in the first phase work.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Yes, I'm just curious on 1.6, 1.8, 1.9, should they be all separate, or is there a tying in with strategy of North Huron, and then we go down to 8, it brings in the county priorities, like I can see that's where our Dimitri works with the county, and then number 9, like I'm just wondering, could that be brought down into 2, like, because each one's going to make a detailed report. I know it'll be all encompass of them, but I'm just wondering if the council thinks that should be the way it goes, or can that be sort of tied in, molded in with one of them? Just a thought.
I'm glad to comment. I don't know if it's my place, but just based on what I heard out of our focus groups, I think you do have 3 actions there. How much energy that would be put to a report for some of them? For example, your economic development officer working with the county. I mean, I think what you're doing is giving direction. Let's make sure there's no duplication of monies that are resourced to economic development, so that you're not doing the same thing that the county's doing, and vice versa. And that your economic development officer and CAO would be charged to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Okay. And Councillor Palmer had his hand
I was
up.
just going to say 6 and 7, or they back one another up. They could be one. Maybe you could add some wording like, market strategy with a balanced growth, I don't know.
Reeve?
Sorry.
I don't think it's up to us to do this. This is presented as it is, and I think it is perfect. We can go through all the wording and everything again, but we've done that many times, and I think it's the way they are different things and for different people. So I think it's fine the way it is.
Yeah, I would just suggest, I'm pretty sure staff will actually look at this stuff and combine where appropriate, right?
Okay. Thank you. You go ahead, Rob.
Okay, thank you. Oh, here's your goal statement on community. You want to be a vibrant, welcoming community. You want to foster tourism. That was a theme that came out very strongly, and we'll continue. The work will continue on that from the previous strategic plan. And of course, we're sitting in a wonderful arts and cultures room right now, so you're supporting all of that good stuff. And then your actions out of that are fairly straightforward, I think. And they tie in with some of your public feedback that you've got. And the next is you want to be a transparent and forward-thinking municipality. And I think you're working on that with your governance and modernization. And if you're, just a comment, if you are looking at, reducing administrative costs or at least containing them, digitization is a great way to do it, because then things become more automated in terms of some of the processes you have in place. So I don't think everyone always understands that's what we're trying to achieve with those tools.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. Is this the point where we can take things off, like explore opportunities for public transportation? Is that?
So,
Do you want to take that away, or is that a suggestion, or what is this the
if I
moment to do
may,
that?
Your Worship, my recommendation would be that you go through the entirety of the slide,
Okay,
and then at the end, we will do that. And so, because there's the
Okay.
draft motion there
Yeah.
to adopt it in principle, and then so we can amend that motion as we
Okay.
see fit to remove action item, whatever.
all right.
Probably the cleanest way to do it.
Oh, Councillor Palmer, sorry.
This is just a wishful statement, I guess, but in number 3, like the governance in modernization, our goal is, I wish that we had also mentioned a common sense approach. You know, it's fine to be sustainable and transparent and forward-thinking, but man, we've got to we need to be commonsensical as well. Just for everyone's sake.
Right. Then you have 3.6 and 3.9, which I think a big one over there is the multi-year budget. I think Councillor Wright was speaking to projects on a multi-year basis, but now you can look at things on a budget basis, on a multi-year basis as well. Because there are a lot of activities in municipal government that carry over in multiple years. We go to infrastructure. Again, a pretty big piece of most municipalities and big piece of how you deliver service. So you have started your asset management, and you will continue with that as per some direction from our province. And I think it's an important piece. Then you need to decide what your future assets will look like, and the rural water supply study is 4.3. We go to services, of course, another big piece of what we do in municipal government. We want to do it well.
Can I ask a clarification question on 4.3? Because it just occurred to me. When we do firefighting services, that's distributed through our agreement with neighboring municipalities, correct? Would the cost of 4.3 be distributed through that agreement? Because they would, basically, the municipalities we support, it's all rural firefighting, right? So they would probably share in that just equally just as they share the cost of delivering fire services.
We have Mr. Redmond, maybe?
Yeah, through the chair, through the chair, this is something more specific to North Huron because it's infrastructure through dry hydrants, so it'd be, a water pipes up to a water source of the river, a pond, something, specifically in North Huron that we would use to draw water out of in the rural areas for structure fires or other large fires. So these would be infrastructure within North Huron. If we wanted to install it in other municipalities, we would have to set that up with them. Would we necessarily use it in while we're fighting a fire at a neighboring municipality? Possibly. I guess the option would be there if it was like kind of close to the border and was our closest water source. But as far as the actual infrastructure and everything, it would be specifically in North.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Talk about this, and then here's where your physician recruitment, your review of service agreements, daycare. There were some of the items that I heard in the public feedback.
I think when we go forward, I think our clerk's going to be mentioning certain ones that we may want to look at or whatever, and probably 5.8, the township's role in campgrounds. We sort of had that talk the other night, but I'll leave that to the clerk to decide.
Rafe?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
For 5.3 review service agreements, I think we, or depending on other municipalities too, and for some basis there, we are looking for the agreement with Montgomery for 20 years and for fire agreements for 5 years. And is that something we want to have a look at for every year then, even for the, say, the landfill things. I'm not sure what we accomplish by doing this on an annual basis instead of doing it every 5 years or 10 or.
Yeah, if you,
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, through Reef Heifer, just in terms of, and this is just, again, my own opinion or my own interpretation of it, and I think what I'm hearing, you know, you can have 5 or 10 year or 15, 20-year agreements, whatever you want. I think what this is suggesting, it says review service agreements, so I'm not reading it, I guess, that we're going to have 1-year agreements.
Okay.
I read it as in terms of, you know, on an annual basis, you know, it may be a situation where we bring back a report as staff and say, we've reviewed these agreements and, you know, they're all no issues, no issues, no issues. This happened this year. You may want to monitor it, or you may want to consider having further discussions. I see it more monitoring.
Okay.
I don't know what what everybody else's thoughts are. I don't think it's intended that we would have 1-year agreements,
Okay.
but that's just my.
That makes sense.
Monitoring.
Yeah. All right.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Councillor.
I think if this was worded, review the opportunity for service agreements annually too, right? Because I know prior to my term on council, we shared certain positions with neighboring municipalities, and then we didn't, right? That changed and we got our own. So I think it would be a good idea on an annual basis to say, hey, are there efficiencies, right? Could we create a new agreement that we didn't have before, right? In order to increase efficiency. So I think it makes sense to think about this annually, even if, to our CEO's point, we don't actually do anything with some of the longer term agreements.
Thank you for your clarification.
Mr. Reef, I just add a comment from my experience. I work with many organizations that haven't ever looked at their agreements, and when you read them, they're very dated and out of practice. So I think this may be a goal, an action item right now under a goal, but in all likelihood, it'll become a practice in the future and expected by future councils that there is an annual review. And whether it's a 5-year agreement or a 3-year agreement, doesn't really matter. We just go through all the agreements and make sure that they're all at the level they need to be. And if there's, as this CAO mentioned, if there's a problem then, or an issue, then it gets identified, and maybe it can't be changed in that immediate year, but it can be changed in a future year, possibly in the next agreement. But it's a good practice. I think it's a best practice.
Sure. Go ahead, Rob.
And then we're into the environment. And this is where there were a number of greening activities and waste reduction, the electric vehicle initiative, charging station initiative, and again, just a general effort to reduce carbon footprint of township facilities and fleet. So after our August 26th session, we did a little exercise with the dots, if you'll remember. So the results of that came up with six top priorities that council identified as a group. And it was develop your balanced growth and development plan. Look at recognizing your volunteers in the community as they're identified as an important resource for you. And then there was a development of a professional development plan for staff. The asset management plan continues to be a priority. The service agreement review was a priority. And then continue with educational opportunities for waste reduction and diversion in North Huron. Those were the 6 that came forward from the end of that session, and there's lots happened since then, but I just thought I'd bring that back to you for
Which was the worst? I saw a lot of red dots on.
Yeah, I didn't-
one
you know what?
in- I know which one it is.
yeah, I'm sure you do.
E, yeah.
I'm focusing on the positive things you
Oh, I
need
know
to do.
are.
So as I said earlier, you will be presented on November 6th with a final document with any changes that you may incorporate today. So, on behalf of myself and Capstone, I'd just like to thank you for all your efforts in making it quite easy and enjoyable to get to where we are today. I know you have a lot of tough sledding ahead as a council to get and staff to get this work done, but I think you have a good framework to guide you along. So, thank you and congratulations for getting to where you are today.
Well, thank you very much, Rob. If there's no other questions for Rob, I just want to thank on behalf of council. We appreciate getting to know you and the work that you did and the insight you gave us all through the 3 different meetings and then coming today. Appreciate that. So again, thank you very much. And were there any other questions from anyone before we let Rob go? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Have a great day.
You too.
So I can, yeah. So again, there's the draft motion there for council's consideration. So we're recommending that you adopt it in principle, which gives us the ability as staff to say that in large part council's in support of what this plan looks like, and we can incorporate those things into our preliminary work on the budget. And then for November 6th, again, we would bring it back a finalized clean document to be adopted by bylaw. So if you wanted to see any further changes beyond what is currently there, I'd say now is the time to do it. I have noted some of the action items that you guys have kind of raised along the way. So 3.5, action item 3.5 is the transportation links. 5.8 that the Reeve just mentioned was the role in the campgrounds, and 6.3 was the EV charging stations one. So that's kind of what you guys have said along the way, but ultimately it's council's direction of what you want to put forward as an motion for amendments, if any.
Go ahead, Councillor, and then Councillor Van Harrison.
Yeah, if I could just speak to the EV charging stations. So that's something that came out of the one breakout group I was part of. And I don't think it should be considered a high priority, but this is a 4-year strategic plan. The EV market is going to change extremely rapidly, right? There's manufacturers that are only going to start producing EVs in 2030. It's only 7 years out, right? And if people driving electric cars can't charge their vehicle in Wingham because there is no place to charge it, they won't come here. They won't even pass through here if there's another place to go, right? So I understand it's maybe not a priority right now, but we do need to understand in 4 years the world will probably look different. In 8 years, it will look extremely different. So I wouldn't want to say it should be anywhere near staff's highest priority, but I would like it to stay in the plan. Just, start kicking the tires at it, right? Like, what are the requirements of, a 4 or 6 bay charging station? How much power would it take? Okay, we've got that basic understanding. Then if an opportunity comes up to say, hey, all of a sudden things change, we're maybe going to knock a building down, it frees up a power supply. Anyways, just for council's thought, right? I'd like to see that stay on the plan. We maybe don't even have to install it in the next 4 years, but we can start the process of thinking about it, I think.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Van Harrison.
Thank you. I would like to take action 3.6 off. It's the area rating, looking at the area rating. In our vision, we have a strong agriculture. We are talking about in the economy about a thriving agriculture. And we've seen with the police costs that if we take the area rating of that, the cost for policing for East Wabanos will go up significantly. We're looking at street lighting for area rating. It might be a small amount, but it is another thing that is put on farmland that really doesn't need it. So I would like to take that off.
Okay, Deputy Reeve, please, and then Councillor Palmer.
Okay. Yeah, I had through your review, I originally had thought about the environmental, about the charging. You made a great point. It's our new future, so I concur with you about keeping that in there now. In governance and modernization 3.5, the public transit, I think as far as as any staff or council's effort or costing to go into that, I think that's kind of out of our pocketbook to try and link transit with. I think that's more of a provincial problem, so I don't really think that needs to be on our personal radar to have staff spend much time on looking into public transit. If it was a viable model, I think the public would have already been in there and have private busing. But it was just the public transit. But I did want to ask the Reeve. You had mentioned where is it here on the campground?
5.8.
5.8. Yeah. What was your idea of removing? What would removing that?
Well, on Monday night, council passed
Yeah.
having a campground, and that's the only campground that we had left. And I just don't want to put things out there that staff, I know they're given a job to come give back a report, but where we just, no, we're going ahead and do this. And because I do believe people had legitimate concerns at our meetings that we had, the feedback we got there, there's some things we have to make some cuts or changes. I think we have to do it, and we got to be ready to be able to do it when we have to. And I know you went with that, and that's fine. That's what council went for. But I feel that that's finished now because it's our only campground left, right?
Okay, I just
what
want
I was
a
coming at.
clarification on that. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Palmer.
Yeah, didn't we just determine for the year about the campground? Because we just don't know what to do. Status quo. It could be status quo forever. We don't know. And it's just our council's, we don't know what next council would bring. So I don't know. It's still, we were, it was suggested to us to not have it because we shouldn't be in the business from our one research model. But anyways, I'm not I think it should stay there. We wouldn't touch it for now, obviously, because of what council decided. But this is for 4 years from now. And my other thought, sorry, about the area rating. Yeah, I concur with Anita. I think we need to maintain it and relook at it for different items or expenses.
Okay, your clerk's just going to give us clarity on something here.
Yeah, so just to clarify, so with 5.8, determine the township's role in campgrounds. So council at the last meeting did provide direction to staff to run it as status quo for 2024. Or I think the motion said starting in 2024. So I guess whether you want this in your plan or not depends on whether this is something you want to discuss further. If you feel that status quo is how you guys want to operate, then I would suggest you take it out of the plan so that staff can use their time to accomplish the other action items. If it's something that council wants to review and consider again, then I think you would leave it in. So it's up to you guys as council of whether you feel you're done with that discussion or whether you're not done with that discussion, I guess.
Go ahead, Deputy Reeve, please.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve. I concur with taking it out of the plan. For the simple reason is it needs to be looked at in a whole. And if we're going to put it in the plan, then we might as well have lines for the weight room. Might as well have lines for every piece of rec that we have. If that's what we're going to prioritize. I don't think it needs to be a priority in our overall plan. I don't think it needs to be brought out that it's that big of a determining factor of how we look at our strategic plan when we're going to be going over all of our processes and all of our infrastructures come tax time. So I don't think it needs to be in the plan.
Councillor Van Hitterson,
Yeah.
please.
I agree with that. Maybe we should use other wording then instead of determining, just like the annual plans, like reviewing them yearly or something like that. Would that be a better wording, or does it make a difference for your plan, or?
Well, I guess so it goes back to, through your worship, I guess it goes back to Deputy Falconer's comments of whether you guys, as a council, see this more targeted to the campground or more targeted to a review of, I guess, your recreation services as a whole, right? If it's more targeted to the campground, you could use wording that says evaluate the township's role, or evaluate campground services on an annual basis, if that's what something you're looking for, or it could be evaluate your service delivery models for all programs or rec programs or whatever you guys are looking for on an annual basis. It's really what you guys want to accomplish as council out of this action item. Like, what are you guys hoping to achieve? What are you hoping to see from
Well, we
staff
have
and
those
report?
people from the kids club coming in, like they would like to have a soccer field there, and I think that's wonderful. But maybe there are more people coming in. Would that influence this, or is it like we've determined or reviewed? Or I think specifically for the campground, I think there are not that many opportunities for other recreation facilities. But I don't know.
Reeve, can I?
Yes.
I would suggest that it should come out, and I mean, because I don't think at least my feeling is we don't actually want staff to put a bunch of work into this. If for some reason there's a significant change out there, say the Thresher organization folds, I don't see that happening, but if it folded, then we would react to that at the time, right? It would trigger a conversation. So that's my feeling. I don't think we need staff to delve into this and write a report. We've done it, I think, spent a lot of effort on this over the last 10 months already. I think we're kind of aligned. Status quo is good for now, unless things change, but then staff would bring that to us, obviously, if something significant changed, right? So just my thought.
Yep, and through your worship, and that's certainly the point of this exercise. If there's things that you don't want us as staff to spend time on, and we can spend that time better to achieve other action items, by all means, now's the time to let us know for sure. So
Yeah.
Okay. Any other input? Go ahead, Carson. What other numbers did you?
so I noted the numbers at the beginning, then I've added the ones that have been noted here. So basically, there's been, I guess, really 4 that council's looking at. It's just whether that's council as a whole has looked at that, or so we can approach them individually by action items, or we can try it as a whole one and see. But basically, the 4 you've identified, or at least someone at this table has identified for council's consideration, is 3.5, which is the transportation links, 3.6, which is area rating, 5.8, which is the role in campgrounds, and 6.3, which is the EV charging stations. But there's also been discussion to take that off too, right? So,
So could that go in something like as a long-term thing, you know, how we've
absolutely. So we are hoping, and unless the CEO, we haven't necessarily flushed it out yet, but we're hoping that for November 6th, you'll have, when it comes back for bylaw, it'll have the short-term, medium, and long-term, so that you guys know, based on staff workloads and who's doing what, of when it's to be expected and when. So if you look back at our current strategic plan, right, it outlines short-term as in the first year, medium term as in the second and third years, and long term as in the last year of the plan, right? So if EV charging stations was kind of your long-term one, right, it would almost be identified as something kind of like 2027 as an item there. And that's how we base our workloads. And then the CAO every year kind of around this time every year, he provides an update on where we're at with achieving those action items that have been designated for those years, and brings it forward to council again and says, is there anything you want to change timelines-wise? So I guess what I'm hearing from council is you might want to keep 6.3 in, and just, we have made note that we can put it as a long-term item.
Councillor Wright, would that fit your?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and just, although I wonder for expediency if we should just, there's been 4 items, I just wonder if we should go through and would it make sense to have a quick vote on each item, whether they stay in or go out, and then that way we've got we should have a recommendation that would then pass, I would expect. Is that
So we can certainly do that.
unreasonable?
So I'll just ask the clerk to read out, and then we'll call for a vote with each one then. Okay, please?
And so this recommendation is going to be to remove these items?
Yes.
So if we vote in favor, we're voting to remove the item from the strategic plan?
Through your worship, exactly. And I'll keep them consistent across the board, so every single item will be to remove. So if there's something you want to keep in, you would want to defeat that item.
Reeve, could we still change some wording, though? Like 6.3, I don't like it as worded, because it's a super expensive plan to have these, and it has to be Tesla, because they have won the charging station war. So they might not only allow only one, maybe it has to be 6 or 8, and I dare say we can't afford that. So I'm just wondering if we can stay sensitive to any potential government subsidies for these things.
So I guess
Well-
through your worship, so the way that's currently worded is that it would be on a cost recovery basis. So there would be no cost to the taxpayers.
And actually, if you read it, it doesn't even say install vehicle charging stations.
And basically,
It actually just says explore the possibility, right?
right. So the things you're looking at, Councilor Palmer, and the considerations you're giving to that would be things that you would bring forward at the time of a report back after this exploration has occurred.
Okay.
So I guess your first motion would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs for the removal of action item 3.5. And again, that's the transportation links item.
Those in favor?
Say,
You-
excuse
you
me,
need to
what
move
was how was it stated?
That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs for the removal of
Oh,
action
yeah.
item 3.5.
All in favor?
So you need a mover and a seconder.
Councillor Van Henderson, Councillor Whitfield? All in favor? Thank you.
So your next one would be
3.6.
that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs for the removal of action item 3.6, which again is the explore the removal of area rating.
Just a question though, down the road when Hutton Heights gets going, is that going to change the picture? Just a question, I forgot to ask that earlier, sorry, Council. Is that going to change the picture?
If I may, because I actually had an interesting conversation with someone that works for Morris Turnberry. What they do for things like street lighting is they actually figure out who has street lighting in their property and who doesn't. And then that is charged as a line item in their tax bill, right? So that does actually effectively remove area rating, right? But farmers aren't paying for street lighting because they don't benefit from it. So that it is a kind of a change which I think satisfies what the rural people are looking for. They don't want to pay for other people's expenses, but yet it does. I think it's maybe a smarter way of doing it rather than area rating. So, but we would have to leave it in here if we wanted to switch to a model like that.
Councillor Van Henderson, please.
I don't even know if that's possible. The way it was explained to me, area rating was blending it all to the whole municipality. So
Could-
I'm not sure how that works.
Would I be able to have Mr. Towns to come and just maybe give us a little help here? Appreciate it.
Hitterson's question, the street lighting is another municipal service, and then we levy the costs associated with those as per any other service that we provide through municipal taxation based on assessment and tax rates.
Yeah, so not on what Councillor Wright is saying, that would be another way of taxing? Is
I am
that even
unfamiliar-
possible or not?
Sorry, I'm unfamiliar with that process. That's not how municipalities levy property taxes.
Okay, then I would like to still remove 3.6. I'll move that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll ask our clerk to read it before we vote on it, please.
Yeah, so again, the motion would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs for the removal of action item 3.6, which is to explore the removal of area rating. So you have a mover and Councillor Van Hitterson.
Okay, second. Okay, all in favor? Defeated.
So just for clarity, that would stay in the plan. So your next one would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs for the removal of action item 5.8, which is reviewing the township's role in campgrounds.
And we have a mover,
Move.
Councillor Wright. Seconder, Deputy Reeve Faulkner. All in favor? Carried.
And then, so your last one is 6.3. So it would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs for the removal of action item 6.3. So again, this is the item for the EV charging stations for staff to explore the potential for EV charging stations. So again, if you want this in your plan, you would defeat it. If you don't want it, you would vote in favor.
A mover, Councillor Whitfield. Seconder, Councillor McBurney.
Yep. So, yeah. So now you put it to a vote. If you want it again, if you want it in your plan, then defeat the motion. If you don't want it in your plan, then carry the motion.
Those in favor? Carried.
You mean defeated?
Defeated. Sorry. Defeated.
It's hard working in a double negative world, isn't
Yeah, I
it?
don't like that.
Sorry.
So then, based on that direction, based on the motions that were carried and defeated, this last motion here would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts the 2024 to 2027 North Huron Strategic Plan as presented at the October 20th, 2023 Special Council meeting in principle, subject to the amendment to remove action item 3.5 and 5.8. And further, that council directs staff to bring back the final version of the 2024 to 2027 North Huron Strategic Plan to be adopted by bylaw at the November 6, 2023 regular council meeting. Give your mover there.
Deputy Reeve. Seconder, Councillor Whitfield. All in favor? Carried.
Closed session, there's none, so.
6, no closed session. 7, confirmatory bylaw. Bylaw number 76-2023, confirmatory bylaw. May I have a mover? Councillor Whitfield, Councillor Wright. All in favor? Carried. Adjournment, that the Council of the Township of North Huron agree that there being no further business before council, the meeting be hereby adjourned at
11:18 a.m.
11:18 a.m. Mover, Councillor McBurney, Councillor Wright, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, council, for coming out and